February 12, 2013, a biting chill hung in the early morning air as the residents of Oakwood, a small American town just off the interstate, went about their daily routines. No one suspected that tragedy was about to strike at the nearby state trooper station. This quiet Tuesday would soon be remembered for the gruesome discovery that shocked a community known for its friendly neighborhoods, well-kept lawns, and a steadfast trust in the uniformed men and women sworn to protect them. Inside the station, Captain Raymond Ray Dwyer was already at his desk. A decorated officer in his mid-40s, Dwyer commanded respect not only for his rank but also for his unblemished service record. He was lauded for his sharp instincts, quick decision-making, and calm demeanor in high-pressure scenarios. Officers under his command trusted him implicitly. Among them was the most recent transfer, Trooper Jenny Caldwell, a bright-eyed officer just a few years into her career. She possessed a curious mind and an unwavering moral compass, traits that made her stand out. At precisely 7:15 a.m., the routine morning shift change commenced. Officers bustled about, exchanging notes on ongoing investigations and local incidents. Trooper Caldwell's absence was noted, but few gave it much thought. New transfers often struggled with the station's early schedule. It wasn't until a haggard desk sergeant came rushing in, breathless and pale, that everyone realized something was amiss. He had found Caldwell's body in the station's back parking lot, hidden behind a dumpster. From that moment on, the station became ground zero for a rapidly unfolding murder investigation. The local county detectives, assisted by a small forensics unit, cordoned off the area, setting up yellow police tape and marking footprints left in the thin veil of snow. The grim reality of seeing one of their own lying motionless, her uniform stained with blood, left the officers reeling. For many, it was their first time witnessing the violent death of a colleague. That, as Captain Dwyer took the podium later that morning to address the media, his voice trembled subtly, a detail easily attributed to shock and grief. He promised a swift investigation and assured the public that no resource would be spared in finding whoever was responsible. Behind him stood Lieutenant Maria Vasquez, a seasoned officer who had worked cases of internal misconduct before. She watched Captain Dwyer closely, keenly aware that high-ranking officers are not immune to suspicion. The initial steps of the investigation revolved around reconstructing Trooper Caldwell's final hours. Surveillance footage showed her arriving at the station around 6:45 a.m. She appeared to walk toward the back exit, seemingly waiting for someone. The grainy camera lens, angled poorly, captured little beyond shadows. A murder weapon was not found at the scene, but signs of a struggle were evident. Scattered footprints, a knocked-over trash can, and Caldwell's broken flashlight near her body. That evening, the investigators convened in the cramped conference room, piling files and reports on a long wooden table. Tension weighed heavily in the air. "We need to treat this like any homicide," declared Detective Carla Moore, the lead detective on the case. "I don't care that she was a trooper or where the evidence leads us. No stone goes unturned." Beside her, Lieutenant Vasquez nodded, fully aware that sometimes the most dangerous secrets are the ones kept closest to home. No, outside news vans lined the station's perimeter, reporters searching for any morsel of information to feed a community suddenly fearful and outraged. Within 12 hours, Oakwood's innocence was shattered. Unbeknownst to most, the killer walked among them. The secret that drove someone to murder a trusted co-worker lingered in the station's halls. In time, the horrifying truth would emerge, revealing that even a celebrated captain could harbor dark motives beneath his polished badge. In the aftermath of Trooper Caldwell's shocking murder, the Oakwood State Trooper Station was plunged into a relentless cycle of grief, suspicion, and intense investigative work. Detective Carla Moore led the official inquiry, supported by a small but determined team of forensic specialists from the county. While the public clamored for answers, the station's collective morale was at an all-time low. How could this have happened on their watch? As Moore and her team combed through Caldwell's belongings, they discovered a diary and a personal laptop. The diary featured cryptic entries about feeling uneasy at work and noting strange remarks from a superior officer. Though no one's name was explicitly mentioned, the references hinted at high-ranking involvement. At first, the general assumption was that Caldwell had stumbled upon something illicit, possibly corruption or a mishandled case. Yet the team lacked concrete proof. They needed more direct evidence. Captain Dwyer, outwardly stoic, urged his remaining officers to fully cooperate. He offered daily briefings, systematically recounting Caldwell's final hours. Still, certain inconsistencies in his recollections began to raise eyebrows. In one instance, he claimed to have left the station at 6:30 a.m. that fateful morning. However, a station clerk remembered seeing him by the coffee machine closer to 6:50 a.m. The discrepancy was minor, yet the rift between Dwyer's version of events and eyewitness accounts gnawed at Detective Moore. Lieutenant Vasquez, a seasoned officer with an unyielding sense of duty, volunteered to investigate Caldwell's phone records. Late one evening, as she sifted through call logs and text messages, she noticed a series of increasingly frantic texts between Caldwell and an unknown number. The messages hinted at confrontation. "We need to meet. This can't go on," was one of the last messages Caldwell sent. Vasquez needed to trace the phone number to see if it tied to anyone in the station. Tension deepened within the station walls. Officers exchanged wary glances, wondering if one of their own was truly capable of such a heinous act. Rumors circulated about Caldwell's brief but potent arguments with fellow troopers. Some pointed to Trooper Alan Barnes, a short-tempered officer who disliked Caldwell's inquisitive nature. Others whispered about Sergeant Ruth Jenkins, who, in such a close-knit environment, secrets had ways of unraveling. But as the rumors proliferated, Captain Dwyer maintained his stance as the rock of the station. He gave calm reassurances to the public, hosted press conferences, and even took the time to console Caldwell's grieving parents when they arrived in town. The community admired his dedication, yet for Detective Moore, something about Dwyer's measured responses struck her as rehearsed. His emotional range seemed off, as though any genuine grief was masked by a more pressing concern. Outside the station, Detective Moore visited Caldwell's apartment to find additional leads. The home was neat and minimally decorated, reflecting Caldwell's disciplined lifestyle. A shoebox tucked under the bed contained clippings of suspicious incidents, anonymous letters, pictures of certain troopers at off-duty events, and references to a rumored real estate scam. Moore's pulse quickened. Caldwell clearly suspected the captain of wrongdoing, but the specifics remained murky. Returning to the station after midnight, Moore conferred with Vasquez. They locked eyes, the flickering fluorescent lights emphasizing the fatigue etched on their faces. "Caldwell was on to something," Moore said, tapping the note implicating the captain. "We need to keep this quiet until we're sure." Vasquez agreed. Exposing a high-ranking officer would require ironclad evidence. In the background, phone lines rang incessantly as media inquiries poured in. The pressure was mounting. The station, once united under Captain Dwyer's command, now felt like a powder keg ready to explode with the slightest spark. In the corridors, the muffled footsteps and hushed voices spoke volumes. No one felt safe, and no one was above suspicion. Days stretched into a week as Oakwood's troopers struggled to contain both public outrage and their own internal unrest. Trooper Caldwell's funeral had come and gone, leaving behind a grieving family seeking justice. Despite the mounting tension, Detective Carla Moore pressed forward, determined to uncover the truth. Her primary focus now centered on Captain Raymond Dwyer. Moore decided it was time to formally interview the captain. Although he ranked higher, protocol allowed for a formal statement in the presence of an independent observer. So, at 8 a.m. sharp, Captain Dwyer walked into the interrogation room, expression unreadable. He sat with his back straight, hands folded neatly before him. Moore began with polite formality. She recounted the timeline, asking him to confirm his whereabouts and any interactions he had with Caldwell. Despite her neutral tone, Dwyer grew tense. His answers were concise, almost too concise. As Moore probed deeper into Caldwell's text messages and her final calls, Dwyer provided vague, non-committal replies. He denied any private confrontation with Caldwell and insisted he had left the station before she even arrived. When asked about the phone number Caldwell had been texting, Dwyer paused, his jaw tightening. "I have no knowledge of that number," he said. A subtle tremor in his voice undercut his words. And emerging from the interview, Moore found Lieutenant Vasquez waiting. "Did you see his face?" Vasquez asked quietly. Moore nodded. "He's hiding something, Maria. His story about leaving early doesn't hold up, and there's too much we don't know." In that moment, they both realized this investigation could topple careers if it proved that the station's revered leader was the prime suspect. While the interviews continued, forensics analyzed critical pieces of evidence. A muddy footprint near the dumpster matched a shoe brand popular among law enforcement. The unusual angle of bruises on Caldwell's wrists suggested a struggle with someone significantly taller. Moore quietly passed this information to the forensic team, ensuring it wouldn't leak to the press prematurely. Outside the station, turmoil brewed. Protesters gathered, holding signs demanding justice for Caldwell. Reporters camped out, hoping for a quote or scoop about the department's internal meltdown. The pressure on Moore and Vasquez intensified tenfold. They needed a breakthrough. And soon, late one night, as Moore pored over phone records, she found a lead she couldn't ignore. The unknown number Caldwell texted was traced to a burner phone purchased in a neighboring county. Cross-reversing transactions and store surveillance footage revealed a figure who bore a striking resemblance to Captain Dwyer, purchasing the phone just 1 week prior to the murder. Moore felt her heart pound. If the captain was behind the burner phone, it placed him squarely at the center of Caldwell's final hours. The next day, Moore confronted Dwyer with the new evidence in a closed-door meeting. He visibly bristled, his voice, once measured, cracked under scrutiny. "I don't know what you're implying," he said, sweat beading on his forehead, "but you'd better tread carefully." Moore recognized this as both a denial and a threat. Fear of exposure was plainly etched on the captain's face, and she knew that fear could make a man very dangerous. Torn between her loyalty to the badge and her duty to justice, Moore considered going directly to the district attorney. But she feared Dwyer's influence could sabotage the investigation if she acted without ironclad proof. Vasquez advised caution. "He's cornered, Carla. If he's guilty, we have to be strategic. A single misstep, and he'll slip through our fingers." Or worse. As the station's daily routine continued around them, a chilling realization took hold. If Captain Dwyer truly was a murderer, then no one was safe. Their very own commanding officer might have killed Caldwell to protect a secret, and he would likely do anything, even kill again, to ensure that secret never came to light. The tension in Oakwood State Trooper Station was palpable. Word of the investigative spotlight falling on Captain Raymond Dwyer spread quietly through the ranks. Hushed whispers filled the hallways, and anxious glances were exchanged behind closed doors. Outside, the press became more aggressive, demanding to know why the department had not made an arrest. Inside, Detective Carla Moore and Lieutenant Maria Vasquez worked day and night, compelled by the chilling possibility that a high-ranking officer had betrayed his oath. Each new piece of evidence chipped away at Dwyer's carefully built facade. The forensics lab found faint traces of Caldwell's blood on the corner of a door in the station's back corridor, an area Dwyer claimed he never entered that day. Moore also discovered that Caldwell had set multiple reminders in her calendar titled Evidence and Captain Meeting, both scheduled mere hours before her death. It was clear Caldwell had been on the verge of confronting Dwyer about something explosive. Meanwhile, Vasquez dug into Dwyer's financial history. She obtained court records revealing Dwyer's involvement in dubious real estate deals. It appeared he had orchestrated property acquisitions at suspiciously low prices, possibly using his position to pressure sellers. Rumors swirled that Caldwell had stumbled across paperwork implicating the captain in corruption, forging a direct link between her knowledge and the motive for her murder. Each confrontation with Dwyer grew more adversarial. In a tense exchange, he confronted Moore in the stairwell, voice shaking with anger. "You're out of line, detective," he hissed. "I'm captain of this station. Don't forget who you're accusing." Yet Moore refused to back down. pressing him about the burner phone and the inconsistencies in his timeline. After that altercation, rumors circulated that the captain had been overheard threatening Moore's career, dark hints of retribution if she didn't drop the case. The tipping point came when the station received Caldwell's final forensics report. The autopsy confirmed bruising that matched the circumference of large hands, suggesting a physical altercation with someone significantly stronger than Caldwell. Fibers found under her fingernails matched the material of the standard issue captain's jacket. It wasn't absolute proof yet, but it stacked the deck heavily against Dwyer. In desperation, Dwyer made a series of phone calls, presumably to old contacts in the judicial system. Moore and Vasquez suspected he was attempting to pull strings. Their suspicion was confirmed when they encountered subtle obstacles, delayed warrants, canceled search approvals, and lost paperwork. Dwyer was using every connection he had. However, the magnitude of a murder trooper case overshadowed his sway. So the district attorney's office quietly backed Moore's request for a sealed warrant to search Dwyer's personal vehicle and his locker in a night operation kept secret from all but a select few. Moore and Vasquez executed the search. Within Dwyer's locked personal closet, they discovered a small box containing Caldwell's police badge, a bloodstained note reading, "No More Lies," and a flash drive labeled "Property Scheme." The evidence was overwhelming. Seeing Caldwell's badge in Dwyer's possession struck Moore with a profound sadness. It was a stark reminder of how twisted this case had become. That night, Moore made her decision. She contacted the district attorney, outlining the evidence implicating Captain Dwyer in murder, tampering with evidence, and corruption. A special task force was immediately assembled to bring him in. The gravity of arresting a police captain, especially one as decorated as Dwyer, could not be overstated. But the truth was too damning to ignore. Even a revered officer could harbor secrets so dark they would kill to protect them. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Moore and Vasquez prepared for the operation. Their hearts pounded with anxiety, knowing Dwyer, if cornered, might react violently. With everything in place, they steeled themselves for what was to come. The line between law and disorder had never been thinner, and Oakwood braced for the storm about to unfold. In desperation, Dwyer made a series of phone calls, presumably to old contacts in the judicial system. Moore and Vasquez suspected he was attempting to pull strings. Their suspicion was confirmed when they encountered subtle obstacles, delayed warrants, canceled search approvals, and lost paperwork. Dwyer was using every connection he had. However, the magnitude of a murder trooper case overshadowed his sway. So the district attorney's office quietly backed Moore's request for a sealed warrant to search Dwyer's personal vehicle and his locker in a night operation kept secret from all but a select few. Moore and Vasquez executed the search. Within Dwyer's locked personal closet, they discovered a small box containing Caldwell's police badge, a bloodstained note reading, "No More Lies," and a flash drive labeled "Property Scheme." The evidence was overwhelming. Seeing Caldwell's badge in Dwyer's possession struck Moore with a profound sadness. It was a stark reminder of how twisted this case had become. That night, Moore made her decision. She contacted the district attorney, outlining the evidence implicating Captain Dwyer in murder, tampering with evidence, and corruption. A special task force was immediately assembled to bring him in. The gravity of arresting a police captain, especially one as decorated as Dwyer, could not be overstated. But the truth was too damning to ignore. Even a revered officer could harbor secrets so dark they would kill to protect them. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Moore and Vasquez prepared for the operation. Their hearts pounded with anxiety, knowing Dwyer, if cornered, might react violently. With everything in place, they steeled themselves for what was to come. The line between law and disorder had never been thinner, and Oakwood braced for the storm about to unfold. The culmination of the investigation came swiftly in the early hours of February 21, 2013. Armed with a warrant and supported by a special task force, Detective Carla Moore led a team to Captain Raymond Dwyer's suburban home. Snow flurries danced under the streetlights as the convoy of unmarked vehicles pulled up to the neat two-story house. The final showdown had arrived. Oakwood was mere moments away from learning the truth about its trusted captain. Lieutenant Maria Vasquez oversaw the perimeter while Moore and a handful of officers approached the front door. The tension crackled in the freezing air. For a moment, there was silence. No barking dogs, no curious neighbors peeking out windows, only the slow crunch of boots on icy pavement. Then, with a loud knock, Moore announced, "Police! We have a warrant!" From inside came the sound of hurried movement. Seconds felt like hours. Then the door flew open, revealing Captain Dwyer, clad in sweatpants and a hastily thrown-on jacket. His eyes widened in disbelief as he saw the drawn weapons and heard the order, "Hands up!" Panicked, he lurched backward, trying to slam the door, but two officers forced it open and tackled him to the floor. A brief struggle ensued, but Dwyer was overpowered. As he was handcuffed, Dwyer glared at Moore. "You don't understand what you're doing," he spat, voice trembling with rage and fear. With the captain secure, the team swept the house. They found boxes of documents related to the real estate scam, stacks of cash hidden in a filing cabinet, and a laptop containing encrypted files. In the basement, they discovered something far more damning: Caldwell's missing firearm, wiped clean but unmistakably hers. The final piece of the puzzle was now in place. Dwyer had not only murdered Caldwell, but had also tried and failed to erase every trace of his involvement. As Dwyer was led outside, reporters who had caught wind of the operation descended on the neighborhood like vultures. Cameras flashed wildly, capturing every furious scowl and shouted question. "Captain Dwyer, did you kill Trooper Caldwell? Were you running a corruption ring?" Dwyer remained stone-faced, offering no response as he was placed in the back of a squad car. The illusion of his impeccable service record shattered under the weight of undeniable evidence. Dwyer was. Over the next several days, the story unraveled like a grim tapestry. Dwyer's hidden world was laid bare. The fraudulent property scheme, the burner phone used to lure Caldwell to the backlot, and the fateful confrontation that ended in her murder. Caldwell had threatened to expose him, having collected enough clues to suspect Dwyer of large-scale corruption. Faced with ruin, the captain panicked, using his training and strength to silence her forever. Oakwood reeled in shock. The betrayal ran deep, staining the badge that residents had believed in. The state trooper station underwent a rigorous internal review, with several officers suspended or reassigned for failing to report suspicious behavior. Caldwell's family, though heartbroken, expressed gratitude for the relentless work that finally brought their daughter's killer to justice. In the days following the arrest, Detective Moore and Lieutenant Vasquez found themselves at the center of a media storm. They spoke at a press conference urging the community to trust that the system, while flawed, could still root out evil, even when it wore a uniform. "We must remember Trooper Caldwell as a hero," Moore stated, her voice breaking slightly. "She sacrificed everything to safeguard the truth." A month later, Dwyer stood trial. The evidence was overwhelming, and a jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and multiple counts of corruption. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The once decorated captain had fallen from grace in a spectacular fashion, revealing the chilling truth that even those sworn to serve and protect can harbor deadly secrets. A plaque honoring Trooper Jenny Caldwell was placed at the station's entrance, a reminder of her courage and the sacrifices made in pursuit of justice.